Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Centre for Healing podcast. Today I'm here with Gemma Carroll, and Gemma is an embodied processing practitioner and a holistic counsellor. And we'll put the links to Gemma's stuff underneath as usual. And Gemma has some wonderful blogs. When I first read Gemma's blogs, I was blown away and had a lot of resonance with everything she was saying. And everything about the kind of spiritual orientation and the trauma healing journey that she conveys in those writings. I thought straight away, like, this would make a wonderful person to bring on the podcast. So I'm very happy to have you here, Gemma. And how are you today?
Awesome. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. Probably just to add to that, I'm based in Aotearoa, New Zealand. My healing journey. Well, where do you want to start exactly?
From the beginning, I guess. What was it like for you growing up? And where that led you, how you got to where you are now.
Yeah. So in many ways, I feel like I had a quite an idyllic childhood. I was really lucky because I had my maternal grandparents living just around the corner, and I was very close to them, in particular my grandfather. And I suppose also blessed because I had a mother who stayed at home with us. She didn't go to work. So, there was a lot of like time in nature. We were a tramping family, which for those of you that aren't from New Zealand, that means hiking
Oh, yeah.
or
Yeah.
rambling.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time in the mountains in summer, and in winter we were skiing, and we had, mum grew all our own veggies. So it feels like a very idyllic childhood in many ways.
Amazing. Yeah.
But certainly through therapy, I have realized there were some developmental traumas.
Yeah.
Um,
Inevitably.
yeah, yeah, because no parent is perfect. And then I guess the first major event that happened to me as a child was our family was in a really massive car accident. So we were coming back from one of those amazing mountain holidays, and we had a head-on collision with a truck and trailer unit that was carrying a whole lot of timber. And that completely changed my life and the life of my family. So it really literally physically shattered us.
Yeah, wow.
Um, so both of my parents and one of my sisters nearly died. In fact, my father clinically died several times, and my mother was left paralyzed from the neck down. So
Wow.
that was a massive event for me and for the people who I loved and who I was closest to. And
Yeah.
I was 10 years old when that happened. And so a lot of my healing journey has been around making sense of that.
Yeah, it's a huge shock trauma. Like,
Massive shock. Yeah. And I think because my injuries were not so much so that I completely lost all memory of it, like the memories started to come back in my adult years. And so I witnessed a lot as a little girl,
mhm.
a lot of sort of terror. I call it terror. Because when I started to experience the sensations in therapy and Hakomi therapy, terror was the word that came to me. It felt horrific. But also when I was, as an adult practicing Vipassana meditation, I had that same feeling of terror, and all those sort of held places in the body contained this terror from that car accident. So it was really massive. And at the time, you kind of just you try to normalize it. And as a little kid, people tend to think that you're okay as well for some reason. Like there's not really, it's
Kids with
really
brains,
interesting.
like it's the same, like they'll
They
get a
just deal with the physical injury. They don't, you put in an ambulance, you take into hospital, you're stitched up, all of that stuff happens. But otherwise, you're left completely alone with the rest of it.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
the worst thing. That's the traumatizing part, being
Yeah, yeah. Well, like when I was that little girl in that accident, when I got to the hospital, I was left in a room by myself for 3 weeks. Like there weren't any other patients in the room even. So I spent many, many hours alone, very frightened and not knowing what was going on.
yeah,
Yeah, so it wasn't just the accident that was traumatic, but the whole process afterwards.
yeah, of course. But like, what do they say that children don't get traumatized from having big feelings, but by being left alone with their big feelings. And so,
Yeah.
not having someone as an anchor, as a safe resource, that it's like the feelings are so overwhelming. Like, what are we going to do? Of course, they're going to get interrupted in their cycle
Yeah,
and get
yeah,
held
yeah.
down into the
And
body.
I've just been rereading some of Peter Levine's work and his writing about being in his accident, and it was making me reflect last night on what it was like for me in that accident, and it's amazing what the psyche does to protect you in a way, So, I have these sort of little flashes of memory as a wee girl being carried away, like being lifted high in the air, it felt like, and kind of I don't know if I was out of my body or not, but I could see the whole scene kind of laid out. Like I could see the truck and trailer twisted and on its side.
I mean,
I
as
could
it
see,
happened,
yeah, yeah, just flashes of it. I have flashes of it.
it's an out of body experience kind of thing. Like,
Yeah, maybe it was, or maybe I was literally being carried through the air by ambulance people. I don't know. Um, and other flashes of like sitting and looking down at my feet and seeing them all swollen and bleeding, just weird kind of shocking images with no emotion, like just complete. It was like a sort of a whiteness, which Peter Levine also talked about this kind of like, it's like there's no time and there's just this expanse of sort of white
yeah,
light,
yeah.
which is shock. That's what shock happens. What happens when you're shocked is you kind of, all the unessential things kind of drop away. It's quite a weird otherworldly feeling.
I know the feeling. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand. Yeah. And so, what was it like, kind of post that when your family came back together, and like, did
Well,
you?
it took many years for us to come back together because my mother was taken to another city and put in a spinal unit. My father was in intensive care for many months. My sister was in intensive care in a coma. Um, I was in hospital for 3 weeks. Then I was sort of shipped around various homes, family friends, and my baby sister also. So we were very separated for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I would go and visit my family in hospital once I was out. All of that was trauma. It was just trauma, trauma over and over again, more and more and more.
It's
Like
huge, like that
yeah,
massive event and ongoing.
yeah. And like for just the brutality of the hospital procedures on people for a little girl to see that, like for my mother, she had like holes drilled in her skull with these kind of bolts coming out and weights. It was called traction, right? They traction the person out because they're trying to create space so that the swelling can settle down and all of that. But for me, my mother looked like she was on some kind of torture thing. Like
Yeah,
her
yeah.
hair was all shaved off. She had these things going through her skull. It was just like so intense and so frightening.
Yeah, definitely.
So all of these just like constant sort of shocking experiences as a little girl.
Yeah,
We eventually came back together, but it was not the family that I'd known for the first 10 years of my life.
yeah.
It was
And
a very different family.
I can imagine that that's a really huge event. And thanks for sharing. And so, as you talk about it, what do you notice? Like, what's changed? Because you've done a whole lot of obvious work on yourself, through somatics and different kinds.
Yeah.
And I know you're kind of seeker spiritually, as well. So, what do you notice has changed now as you talk about it versus, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, before you'd done any kind of
I noticed that what happens when I talk about it now is the reality of it is a lot more felt.
yeah,
Whereas I would talk about it in the past and I would be very dissociated from it. So it would just be like a story that I was telling.
yeah, I understand that definitely.
Yeah, whereas now it's like, now I really feel the truth of it.
Yeah,
And I can feel the truth of it and not be overwhelmed anymore. Like I went through times where I would talk about it and I could barely talk about it because I was starting to feel the truth of it, and that would become could be quite overwhelming at times. And also the difficulty in talking to people about it is that their reactions would be really overwhelming for me. So people's pity or people's shock or whatever their emotion was, because it's quite a full-on story for people to hear. I found that very difficult to kind of, you know, feel other people's stuff when I was trying to hold my own feelings,
yeah,
my
yeah.
own feelings.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
So as that's kind of happened, you've been able to kind of open up that box. Uh,
Yeah.
what was it like when it first started, and what kind of things did you do? What kind of practices that helped you contain that without kind of tipping beyond your window of tolerance and be able to kind of experience it and own it and integrate it like it happened and I can feel it.
It's
What?
been such a long journey, I have to say, Matt.
Or,
So, probably to be honest, the way I first started to feel or not feel was in my teenage years when I just partied like crazy, right? So just fully, I tried to manage the feelings by numbing,
yeah,
a lot of numbing. So th they were fairly innocent kind of numbing substances in my teens, but by the time I got into my 20s and left New Zealand and went to live in London, I was hardcore partying.
yeah,
Yeah. So so what what that did in a way though was like it temporarily managed things, but it kind of made them bigger as well. So like I had some really massive experiences taking LSD and magic mushrooms and things like that that really like blew my mind and really opened up my perception so that I became more and more curious about truth and about what is real. And
mm,
that became less about the external world, but more about my internal world. What is the truth in here? Who am I really? All those big questions that people on a spiritual journey ask.
so you feel like the psychedelic or the medicines opened up that kind of those existential inquiries, open.
Yeah, yeah. I thought I was escaping, but actually I was inscaping.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. To the point that which I did not think that I was actually going to be able to live much longer unless I left London, cleaned up my act. And so I returned to New Zealand, and a new chapter began.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow. So do you feel like those experiences on psychedelics kind of helped and propelled you onto a spiritual journey? Do you feel like you would have gone on a spiritual journey without them?
I would have gone on a spiritual journey without them, no doubt. I was having spiritual experiences as a child. So, when I was a little girl, things would happen like somebody would be injured or hurt, and I would feel the physical pain. I would feel the ache. So my level of sensitivity was quite high as a child. And one of the gifts that my father gave me, as well as a whole lot of other stuff that aren't so much gifts, maybe, but one of the things he did was he really piqued my curiosity around the nature of reality because he used to talk to me about the cosmos and about the concept of infinity. And, he was really interested in stars and planets and chaos theory and all that kind of stuff. Super clever guy. And he used to talk to me about that stuff when I was 5 or 6 years old. And so I had this kind of already my mind was kind of being expanded through those conversations. Plus, I had this high sensitivity. And so, yeah, I guess the spiritual journey probably would have happened anyway because there were already some doors open. I do believe actually that all humans have that potential to self-actualize. It's just a part of being human.
Yeah, yeah.
And in some ways, things like these huge, shocking events or loss or the wounding or whatever, they can propel you.
Yeah.
Um, and in terms of the psychedelics and stuff, I certainly wouldn't prescribe them as a way of
Yeah. Sure.
like it's a kind of a cheats route.
Yeah.
It's not a permanent. It's not permanent the effect
What
of
do
them.
they say? Like they can let you glimpse what's through the window, but you can't climb to the other side.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And you can't kind of control it like you can through things like yogic practices, which has been the path that I took. So when I returned to Aotearoa, New Zealand, I started to get healthy, I fell in love, and I became pregnant really quickly. So I became a mother
Yeah.
when I was like 28, 29. And becoming a mother was very healing for me. And that was also the time at which I took up yoga asana practice, which is the postural practice of yoga. And I became very grounded. Like being pregnant was the most grounding experience for me. It was amazing. I felt like a total goddess.
Yeah, wow, amazing.
Yeah.
Not everyone's experience, but amazing that you.
No, I loved it. I loved being pregnant. I felt so empowered and so in my body. Like it really brought me down into my body
Yeah,
because I had been way up out here somewhere.
yeah,
And I'd seen healers and stuff, and I'd been to clairvoyance and all those sorts of things. And I constantly kept getting the message from energy healers and all of those sorts of um, alternative helpers that I was very connected to spiritual world and to this sort of super consciousness, but I wasn't, but I needed to come down into my body. And so becoming pregnant actually really did that for me. It really grounded me. Otherwise, I might have just flown away into the
yeah.
space.
Do you think like the shock trauma had anything to do with the bouncing up into the?
Yeah, yeah, I think it could have been a way to survive it, and I think potentially, spiritual life can still do that a little bit, take you away from the experience of being here and now. It's a sort of a little balancing act, I think, to be a spiritual person but living here and now in a human experience.
I had a wonderful conversation on another episode with Lynn Marie Lumiere, and she was a student of Adyashanti, and she's also a trauma therapist around this topic. And we were talking about the ability to hold the space of presence whilst at the same time feeling your humanity, and recognizing they're not in conflict and they're not actually separate.
No, it's all the same. It's
Yeah, it's only
yeah,
the mind that's like one or the other, Like I want to go into the spiritual to get away from the human, but
yeah,
to be able to hold the two. And we were talking about that being actually what non-duality is because it's one, versus
yes.
just moving from existence to kind of non-existence.
Yeah, there's no separation.
Yeah, exactly. Between the human and the spiritual. It's like it's the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
unified experience.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And so, how wonderful for your child, for you to be so grounded and feeling that way throughout the pregnancy, because pregnancy can or has a huge impact, how the mother's
Yeah,
feeling on that.
yeah. She was an amazing baby to have inside my body as well. I named her, her name means star because she felt like a star inside me. Like she was sort of stretched out and I could feel her like sort of orbiting slowly, like her arms and legs stretched out like a star. And she just seemed to slowly kind of orbit around inside me. And it was just, she was such a peaceful, beautiful baby to have inside me. Yeah, she was
Yeah.
amazing.
And so, what was motherhood like after that, post birth?
Um, a lot of it was really beautiful and came really naturally to me and reconnected me with my own mother who had died. Of course, she died when I was 17. And so it was very healing for me. Um, but also there were triggers
No,
being a parent.
of
Yeah,
course. Yeah.
for sure. Especially once the second one came along, which was in quick succession because I was so in love with my first baby and so in love with being a mother. I was like, let's have another one. Let's do it quick. Let's make a baby.
Yeah.
So I had two babies who were only 20 months apart. So
Yeah.
I was actually super exhausted by the time the second one was born. Yeah.
And I've got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, so about
Yeah.
2 years apart, and
Yeah.
there can be triggers,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's intense. And the way we parent and the way we are families in the modern Western world is not great.
No.
And it's starting to happen a little bit in the rest of the world too now, this nuclear family thing, and there's just not enough support as a parent and you're doing everything alone, a lot of the time and that it's not sustainable, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've noticed with my kids, like at the developmental age they're at, my it's kind of like a mirror, and my body will start to kick up how I felt at the same age that they were.
Yeah.
Like 6, my son's really finding his autonomy and boundaries and no, and like pushing my buttons and stuff like that. And like he gets this anger, and I have that same anger come up in me,
Yeah.
I recognize, wow, this is how I felt when I was his age and my autonomy wasn't respected and I was squashed
Yeah.
and into
Yeah. Yeah.
rage and like rebelliousness.
Yeah. Yeah, they're such great teachers, aren't they, our children? But also that Yeah, for sure the triggering thing and the observing certain milestones of age was really interesting for me. So seeing my daughter when she was 10
Yeah, yeah,
and realizing what a tiny, tiny little girl I was when that really intense stuff happened.
yeah,
And I took on a lot at that age because I was the oldest in the family. So by the time everybody came back home, I just became like the caregiver to everybody, trying to look after everyone. And when I looked at my daughter at that age, I was like, oh my God, that was just so wrong.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was so unjust that I took all that on and that everybody let me take all that on.
Yeah. And throughout this time, do you like, was this a period where you felt you were able to connect with the feelings, as you were having these
As
observations?
a mother, yeah, I was, because by then I was more embodied. I had a yoga asana practice, which I continued through all of my pregnancies and through right forever after, really. I've been a yoga practitioner now for 24 years. So once I started, I never stopped. For me, that was like my anchor and it totally saved my life. So yeah, I was able to feel and I also had I had a sort of deepening relationship with a therapist who was a naturopath actually and an acupuncturist, but partway through our relationship together, she was training as a Gestalt psychotherapist. So then we kind of changed our relationship and she became my psychotherapist. So not only was I doing my own practice to come to know myself, but I also had the guidance of a Gestalt psychotherapist. So yes, more and more the capacity to feel was growing.
Yeah.
And also the other interesting thing that started to happen, what I realized was it was because I was feeling safer in my life, was I started to have flashbacks to the car accident, and I started having panic attacks, and so all of this, more stuff was t starting to bubble up because I was in it. I was strong enough to start to feel it, and I was like so grateful to my psyche that it had waited and that it held this stuff, but also, it was quite terrifying. One panic attack I had, I was out at a gig with a friend and like I completely fainted and they had to carry me out. Like it was quite intense. I thought I was having a heart attack, and so there was some quite big experiences of felt felt stuff.
Yeah, so that's locked in sympathetic energy, like through the yoga and the embodiment work, like you kind of
Mm.
get access to it, and it just pulls that surge into the spine.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Can be very
Yeah.
intense. And people can have those panic attacks and not know why, you know,
Yeah.
not make the
Yeah.
correlation, not make the
Yeah.
link.
Now, there was always, because of the yoga and maybe also just because of my nature, there was always a part of me that was able to observe what was going on and not get completely overwhelmed. Um, so yeah, the yoga was a gift, but there was something that I came into this world with as a child that stayed with me. Like I remember my father telling me about the day I was born, and he held me in his arms and he said I just looked at him with these big eyes, and that was kind of how I was described as a child. Was I was very observant and I would just sit and look at everything, just
Yeah.
sort of
Okay.
quietly staring at everything. So it's quite a quiet, introverted child who did a lot of observing.
Yeah, interesting. And so then that quality, like stayed with you as
Mm, mm,
panic
yeah.
attack. And so that's a quality that we try to cultivate, with our students and when working with people is that capacity to witness and see things objectively, to
Mm,
curiously kind of observe. As Peter Levine says, curiosity is the opposite of trauma.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah, and that I think the curiosity is something that I've nurtured and fed over the years too. So, when I went to university, I did a degree in philosophy, Western philosophy, but I also did theatre studies the whole way through. And so this sort of curiosity around what it is to be human, the sort of whole gamut of human emotion, interrelational stuff, all of that stuff that you can do in theatre. That was actually a really important part of my healing journey too, I believe. So that was before I got into yoga or anything like that. It was, even though I was a crazy party animal,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was also doing all this theatre.
yeah.
So this was a way for me to express things that I didn't necessarily feel I could express in my real life. This was a way to feel feelings in a way that I maybe didn't feel I could do in real life. So, you know, I had some intense characters that I played on stage that were quite often, it was interesting actually, quite often I was cast as sort of an emotional cripple
Yeah.
or a very vulnerable person or a very damaged person. So I quite often got those kinds of roles. And so I was really able to deepen into those feelings. So that was actually a big part of it too, was to become another character
Yeah.
so that I could feel.
Yeah, amazing. And so you had all these different kind of it's like everything kind of aligned and was like, you had this theater where you were able to practice these things, this asana, the pregnancy. It's like everything aligned so you could kind of descend down and build that capacity to be
Yeah.
like in your body, like
Yeah. And it was about building capacity and I sometimes talk to my counseling clients about this as it's like a kind of a fitness. So you develop this fitness just as you would go to the gym to build up the strength in your body. You build up a psyche strength or a spiritual strength, through these practices
Mm.
to a point at which you can go to the darkest place and be okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is intense. And that happened for me just before I turned 50. And it was towards the end of the pandemic, and I was like, oh my God, I've got to get out of the city. I can't live in the city anymore. Everybody's so frightened, and I just can't be around all of this fear and anxiety and hatred. I just need to go and live in the bush. So I sold my little house and I bought a patch of bush on a peninsula and lived alone for a year and a half.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I continued to work. I worked remotely. And I still, was in touch with my kids and my friends and all of that sort of thing. But otherwise, I was completely alone in the forest, in the bush with my cat. And I went to a very, very dark, intense place. It was so, so full on. But for me, it was like a great adventure. Like I was like, yes, let's go here. Um, it was intense. Like I actually felt like I was dying. I felt not kind of like a physical death, but more like an energetic and emotional and death of identity. And what led up to it was I was having like bonfires and burning heaps of stuff and like doing all this quite um, external purging of my life story, like getting rid of a whole lot of stuff, like 20 years worth of diaries and writing and poetry and stuff. I just burnt it. I just burned everything. I was like, yeah, I'm not this anymore. I'm not this anymore. I don't need all of this, you know. But then there was this internal purging that was the most intense part, and it reached this point where there were sort of 3 nights in a row where I didn't sleep and my whole body was shaking and I couldn't walk. I was like kind of dragging myself around on the floor in my house.
Yeah, wow.
I've talked to a few people, not many people about this, and I'm not sure if I feel like maybe people must just go, man, she's crazy.
I understand. No, I understand.
Like for me, it was this wonderful, terrifying, but wonderful and necessary part of my journey was to go to this dark, dark, dark place where I died, basically. I felt
Yeah.
like I died.
Those experiences are like, the degree of the resistance we have to it is also the degree of suffering that it's going to cause us. If we're surrendered to it, like, okay, I'm going to go here.
Yeah, yeah. I was just like, for me, it was a little bit what it was like when I used to take acid.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is going to be intense, but I want to go. I want to find out what's there and what's inside this and what happens when I come out the other side of it. And so that's, I needed to be alone to do that.
Yeah.
Could not have any other people around me to disturb my experience or interrupt my experience. For me, it was really important to be alone. And I was able to talk with people, who were checking in that I was okay, a couple of friends and things like that. But on the most part, for the most part, I was alone and I needed to be alone with it.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it was a great kind of shedding. It was a huge
One,
release.
like, to face death, it's like we can only face it alone.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
on doesn't have to be physical death, but like a spiritual death or a death of identity where we're on that kind of precipice, on that edge of that cliff. Like you can't take anyone with you. It's like something we have to
Yeah.
own. And it's in those moments we recognize our existential aloneness. You know?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I've just been reading some stuff about existentialism in terms of the counseling approach, and it's really fascinating and really like, oh yeah, okay, that's part of my it's part
Yeah.
of my story for sure.
And so what ended up happening? What happened?
Um, well, there was this kind of just this what happened? So I guess I kind of came through that, and there was like a feeling of being very empty, being very expansive as well, though. Um, and light, like a lightness.
Yeah.
Um, and afterwards, what I literally did was I went and I climbed a mountain with two very dear friends. And then I sold most of my possessions, sold the farm, and went to India for 2 years. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was, a very much the dark night of the soul for me. It was 3 dark nights, but it had been a long journey leading to that point. And then I was ready to really gift myself some juicy nourishment by plugging into the source of my beloved yoga. So yeah,
It's kind of like, the journey is it's like the tide kind of recedes, like we're born and the tide comes in, and as it comes in, it's accumulating all this stuff, this self, this story, this narrative about who we are.
yeah,
And at a certain point, it starts receding.
yeah,
As it recedes, bits cling on and don't want to let go, and like we have to kind of see all the used skeletons and tires that are left like at the bottom of our
yeah,
lake or our ocean. And then as it kind of comes back, it's just we're faced with, as you said, our emptiness,
yeah,
our own emptiness, and it's just like a luminous presence. When you said
yeah,
for a baby you were just like these big wide eyes, just observing. It's like that's what we are in our natural state before we've
mm,
added on this and that.
mm.
It's like the
And the this and that still comes, right? So like I still I come back and and from India and I'm or even in India as well, still having human experiences and still receiving some fresh imprints,
mm,
you know. But what happens now is it's kind of like I sit back in my seat a little bit more and a lot of it is quite amusing, even the painful bits.
yeah,
It's like just like this interesting, it's like I'm part of this interesting um experiment almost. Yeah.
yeah. So it's not like it's like the same things happen, but you're no longer identified with them.
No, no. Yeah.
Beyond them, and it's my experience is kind of like there's the conditioning and the pain and the experience of the being of being human, which is fully included in the space of what's unconditioned and can
Mm, mm.
both simultaneous. It's a paradox. It's
Yeah, it is a paradox. And it's difficult to share what that's like with people. It's not I haven't found a lot of people that get
yeah,
that
yeah,
yet.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So how do you think like that affected your ongoing kind of trauma healing journey, opening up to that space within?
It just it felt like I then had all of this energy, in particular a loving energy. I just felt like I returned to this place of immense kind of infinite love. Like I just felt like I was love. I am love. So I just felt like I was this huge glowing ball of love. And it was really interesting because wherever I went, and mostly that was India the last 2 years, that was what I received. I was feeling love and I was love. And it was just like this, just it's become a very beautiful experience for me to be.
Yeah.
to be alive here and now, like
Yeah.
it's just all love. And even when the difficulties come and go, there's still just this never-ending source of love. Yeah.
Source at the core of experience.
Yeah, yeah. And people who have known me for a long time, I know they can see it because they say it. They're like, "Wow, you're glowing. You look so happy." Like they're all trying to make sense of what is she even what's happening? How come she's like this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel like, do you feel like that's then acted as a resource, to be able to actually stay with parts of yourself that perhaps would have been add
Yeah, for
to your
sure.
ability
For
to,
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 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 And I had a beautiful experience before EP. I did some training in Hakomi therapy, and I had a beautiful experience with a fellow student who was practicing with me. And she also had trained in IFS, internal family systems, and through her guidance in the practice session, I had this beautiful experience of being able to love this part of myself, this that had been exiled for so long and had not had her needs met and all of this. And it was this wonderful um, realization that I had all that I needed within me to care for myself and to love myself. It was all there. It's all there, It was very beautiful. And so more and more I've been able to work in that way with other people.
yeah. So the more you're able to hold that space for yourself, the more it translates to be able to give that to others.
Well, that's the only way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't fake it.
No. And then that acts as a co-regulation and anchor point for our clients or the people that we're working with
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah, yeah. And the beautiful thing is that that's our nature.
Yeah. That's what everything is.
It's not something that some people can't have necessarily, like potentially we are all of us are that. We're all that. Yeah. Which is so beautiful. Like it's just like, you know,
Mm.
I can't lose hope.
It's like that, love thy neighbor as thyself. It's not a metaphor. It's literal, you know.
Yeah.
Power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
wonderful.
it's so interesting the amount of courage it takes to remember that.
You don't have to face some of the most core resistances and fears that
Yeah, yeah,
follow familiar identity.
yeah, yeah. You have to be really brave. And that more often than not, that means having some support, some other being there with you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So, um, what's life like now? What do you do now, and how is this whole journey kind of embodied itself, and how is it translating into how Gemma lives her life and expresses herself? And
I feel like I'm very much in flow, so I don't have attachment to things the way I used to, including my path. It just kind of keeps unfolding before me, and I just keep kind of moving along. Like there's not this kind of sense of um, who should I be? What should I do? Where should I go? Where do I belong? I don't have any of those questions anymore.
yeah, amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of existential questions falling away.
Yeah. They've fallen away.
I resonate with that
Yeah.
definitely. It's only when they started to erode away, it's like you realize how much angst there was unconsciously
I
by
know.
having those questions.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The knots of identity, that need to hold on and know what's happening and remain in control. Uh,
Yeah. And I mean that's all just that's the natural way of the mind, of the human mind. And I've studied that in Vedanta philosophy, but also I know it now through my own experience. So it's not just a learning, but a knowing. And that's where the freedom comes. That's where the liberation comes, is that through enough practice, and sometimes that can take a long time, sometimes it can take a short time, you know.
yeah, yeah,
It's not a cognitive
exactly.
accomplishment. It's like
Not an
permeation.
input,
It's
right?
like the whole your whole self is permeated with this knowing.
Yes, exactly. And it's like it's actuality. It's immediate. It's an experience that's happening right now. It's kind of very different to reading a book and understanding everything there is to know about a strawberry. It's like
Yeah.
taking a bite and knowing directly the
Yes.
strawberry. And so, what you're talking about is the experience of realization versus an understanding of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When you say permeated through your whole being, it kind of like has this sense of holding to it, like unconditional holding, like it's holding everything within it in its unconditional love. But and then it's kind of like it can feel it in the cells of the body at the same time.
Yeah. But even holding doesn't feel like the right word because that makes it sound like it's contained.
Yeah,
And it's
but it's
not.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not it's not a thing in space and time and location. Like it's all.
But yet it is permeated through space, time, and like
Yeah, it's very difficult to put our silly old linguistics to it. Like it's
possible. Yeah, it's impossible.
we try.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. And so, do you feel like that, I know in my experience, opening up to that space gave me more capacity to be human. It
Yes.
was like before that, and it's still, I can be quite defended, at times, different reactive patterns of my nervous system, but it's kind of like the space, which we call it presence, the space of presence can help give the capacity to step in more fearlessly, and experience
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
some really
For
intense.
sure, for sure. And in a way, as you're saying that, it makes me think about those shocking experiences that I have had in my life and see them actual gifts of where reality dropped away and all I was present in many ways, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all I was complete awareness when that car accident happened.
Shock of
And
it. Just,
like it's just that the peripheries drop away and you suddenly have no boundaries, you have no borders. You're receiving everything.
yeah. You don't even notice you're in that state at the time either. It's just
No,
you're present
no.
experiencing.
Yeah, yeah. And so it was like that, the other memory that's coming to my mind right now is the memory of when my mother died and she'd been in intensive care on a life support and she chose to end her life. So she had to go through a whole medical ethics committee and everything for her to refuse any further medical treatment and remove herself from the machine. And I was with her, like I had my arms and legs sort of wrapped around her as her body took its last breaths. And for me, that was another, experience of boundlessness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it was the most beautiful experience to be with somebody as they left their body.
Yeah.
And this was my mother. This was somebody who I adored. Like one of the people that I've felt so much love for in my life was my mother. So there was also a whole lot of grief and stuff coming. But through all of that and beyond all of that was just this experience of awe, just total awe,
Yeah. Yeah.
and wonder. Like it was just I felt the energy leave the body. It was like the room filled up with a sort of a warmth. And at the same time, the sun was rising. So, there was this pinky peachy glow in the sky coming through the hospital window. It was an incredibly beautiful thing, which people just look at me like I'm bonkers when I say that because they're like, but you were 17 and your mother died in your arms. And it's like, no, it was actually so beautiful. And I'm so grateful that I was there to feel all of that and to be with all of that.
Sounds like you were able to really open to the experience.
Yeah, yeah, I was.
No, I don't want this to happen. Like that grip, of course you didn't want your mum to pass away, but that existential pushing against, you could open to.
No, I was just love. I just felt so much love at that time. The room felt filled with love.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like that when I gave birth to my babies as well. Just incredible expansive love.
Yeah. Yeah.
So giving birth both times were home births, with no intervention or anything. And none of it terrified me. It was just like these experiences that I just went fully into with my whole being. And I just, yeah, they were the most beautiful experiences. And I also have had clients over the years who are dying. And it's been that same experience where I'm entering this level of consciousness where there is no boundary.
Yeah.
And I had one client who asked me to be like a birthing partner. One of my yoga students actually asked me to be there when she gave birth. And again, it was the same thing. Birth and death is the same thing. It's like I really realized that through being with those people is like these transitions.
Yeah.
It's very close to truth.
Yeah. Yeah. That gap between birth and death.
It's so fine, and that's where you can, if I suppose not, it's of course it's not like this for everybody, but for me, that is where I really, really can feel that pure consciousness
Yeah.
is in those spaces where the
Yeah.
veil is so thin.
It's the gap between two thoughts, the gap between the inhale and the exhale, inhale, birth, exhale. That,
Yeah.
that tiny little gap right there, is pure consciousness in its unmanifest form.
Mm, mm,
So and if you are witnessing thoughts, there's a gap between thoughts and you can kind of recede into just silence.
mm.
And then as you deepen into that, that recognition comes, wow, everything is manifesting from that one
Yeah.
source.
It's so awesome. It's so
Yeah.
awesome. And I have a similar experience when I'm in session with clients as well, and holistic counseling, and EP beautifully gives you ways to do this.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful way of working. I love it. So thank you so much for your work
You're
and
welcome. I'm glad it resonates.
it means that I get to be that. I
Yeah.
get to be in that field of consciousness. It's like a super consciousness is
Yeah.
what I feel. And be with someone
Yeah. Yeah.
as they kind of mine their own gold. And it is gold. All of those wounds and all of those pains and all of those difficult, I say in inverted commas, feelings. They're
Yeah.
gold. This is like we're mining for gold. It's this beautiful treasure in there.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
that, sitting in that sense of presence, there's a resonance as well for clients. Like it's beautiful to be able to offer that to our clients, because so many of our wounds were because we were disconnected from that, or someone wasn't there to offer it for us in a time of,
Mm,
well, we're left alone,
mm,
your experience. And so to have someone there, and I know what it's like for me, having someone sit and offer that presence, it just offers that sense of safety and unconditional holding human to human, you know, in our shared kind of nature.
mm.
It helps these wounds to metabolize, so that therapeutic relationship between client and practitioner, it's absolutely fundamental.
Oh, the therapeutic relationship. Yeah, totally is. Totally is. Yeah.
And so, what kind of people do you see and who do you work with? These kind of these days?
I see whoever comes.
Yeah.
Yeah, whoever comes.
So you
Yeah.
don't have a niche or you just work with whatever life presents.
Whatever life presents at the moment, I guess I have some curiosity around working a little more with death and dying, but there's not a desperate need for it. I did also train as a death walker through an amazing Australian teacher, actually, Zenith
Like an
Farag.
end of life doula, like kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like a doula, but
I've thought of doing the same thing actually.
yeah, I think there's some semantic issue with doula where it used to mean like servant or something like that. So the training that I did with Zenith Virago, who's based in Byron Bay, she calls it Death Walker. So
That's a
you're
good
alongside
name.
the person. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's more of an equanimous kind of relationship.
Yeah, Death Walker. It sounds like something from Star Wars or
I
something.
know, it's cool, eh? Like that.
Yeah, I've considered the same thing, and because the heart space, it's something like a topic for me that really cracks the heart open, because you can be, like, well, in my experience, I can be in a spacious presence, but for it to actually penetrate and break the heart wide open is a different thing again.
Yeah, yeah.
have traumas kind of get in the way and close that. But if I'm contemplating death or around death, like it opens that existential grief, and
Yeah.
then
I just feel like for many of us, the societies that we live in, there's so much fear and stigma around death and dying, whereas my knowing of it is that it's no different to birth.
yeah, yeah, it's not an end.
Just allow things, if we just let things be, there'd be far less suffering, but the fear, and the anxiety and the denial of the truth
Yeah.
is, we make things so much more complicated than they need to be.
Yeah, death is such a taboo over here. In other cultures, like it's experienced totally differently. Western culture has such a toxic relationship to not just death, but so many things. But
Yeah,
death,
yeah.
death is a huge thing, and like in other cultures, you go to a funeral and everyone's howling, crying, like grieving, like saying yes to the grief, like opening to it. Over here, it's like
Oh, I know.
holding it in, like you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And then obviously it all just gets stuck in our system and we don't experience the heart opening.
yeah, yeah. I think that the other thing that's been interesting is this year I've started my master's in counselling, which I was talking to you about before we started the interview. And, the universities in Aotearoa, New Zealand, are very much on the decolonisation path. So there's a whole lot of stuff around um, identity and culture and a sense of belonging and as a Pākehā person, which means non-Māori person in New Zealand, it's been very interesting for me to look at that aspect of my life
Yeah.
and my ancestral lineage and my feeling is that for those of us that are descended from colonizers, there's a whole lot of stuff there that's really interesting to work with as well around shame, guilt,
Oh,
white privilege,
excellent.
all of this kind of stuff. But also above and beyond that, where am I indigenous to?
Yeah.
Where is my indigeneity? And therefore, where are my people's, my ancestors' spiritual practices? Because we are all indigenous to somewhere, right? And somewhere back down the line, we would
Yeah.
have, ancestors who were connected to nature fully and who lived in an indigenous way, in a spiritual way, in a ritualistic way, where emotions were processed daily as a part of life around the fire or through song and dance and all of this. And so that is also something that's really, um, I've got a lot of curiosity around at the moment, is this, indigenous wisdom. And those of us that have lost contact with that because our generations have migrated so many times, and every time we migrate, we leave something behind. We leave our language, we leave our culture, we try to assimilate into the new place, we take on new things that aren't really ours, or like it's that really fascinates me, cultural identity and how that creates trauma.
Oh, it does hugely, and like Western culture, the systems that we live within and our culture, so much of it is a response to trauma.
Mm,
It's an attempt to keep deep fears and pains and wounds at bay, and shame
mm,
things you mentioned. Like you go around Western culture, you can feel it in the air, in the field. It's
mm.
we are such a traumatized culture, and
Yeah,
as you were talking, it's like you could connect some dots. That's why.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's so interesting. And when I was living in India the last 2 years, to be a minority person, to be one of not many white people in a country like India was humbling, but also very freeing for me. Um, because I guess I don't know, it gave me an experience of observing a culture that was so ancient and so bold and so real and so authentic. I just, yeah, then it made me guess again, ask that question of where do my people come from?
yeah, it's
Even though I have all of the Vedic kind of understanding of, those narratives and identity and stuff are not really real, but at a certain level they are real, and at a certain level we do have intergenerational trauma, which we carry in the cells of our bodies. So it's just another layer that's interesting to explore.
Yeah, intergenerational trauma runs deep, collective,
Yeah.
intergenerational. The culture that has bled through shapes our posture, it shapes our cheekbones and the way we kind of hold ourselves. It's everything, and it's right here in the field, but usually out of consciousness. To
Yeah, yeah,
start to shine a light there, it's like a whole journey in itself.
yeah, yeah. This is what's so cool, right? The journey's never done. We have so much exploring to do.
Never done, no end point.
No end point. And it's also for me, it feels a bit rather than a linear journey, it's like a spiral. And I kind of sometimes I'm spiraling in and sometimes I'm spiraling out. And it's like this, it's an expansion and condensing all the time, you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly that contraction and expansion. I use in every podcast episode, I brought this up like the jellyfish, stress,
Yeah, yeah,
constantly
yeah,
in flux. And, it's like evolution. Evolution has no endpoint. It just continues to refine,
yeah, yeah,
the infinite in expression. But
yeah.
in saying that, I think we've hit our endpoint.
Awesome. That was a cool little trip.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Thanks so much, Gemma. It was lovely to have you on. And so if anyone wants to get in contact with Gemma, we'll put her contact details below and her website and stuff. And Gemma offers obviously sessions in embodied processing and holistic counseling and Hakomi, did you say?
Hakomi I've done a little of and internal family systems also. So I'm a sort of have a pluralistic kind of approach, depending on who is with me, who
Right.
the client is, you know. So it's a sort of a co-creation with the client as to what tools are used in session.
Beautiful. And I can personally highly recommend Gemma, having worked with her myself as well.
Thank you, Matt.
So thanks everyone for listening, and I'll see you soon, Gemma. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.